The Raiders dropped their fourth in a row after losing to the Chiefs 27-20 in a game that was very winnable. We'll talk about that plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for October 28th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making this show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you checking us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And definitely appreciate everyone that showed up at Allegiant Stadium and, came up to me at the Torch and said, hey, we listen to the show each and every day. We appreciate the work that you do. Listen to the show. Don't agree with you all the time, but it's all good. Like anybody who listens for 5 minutes, 55 minutes, whatever the case may be, definitely appreciate it. Again, whether it's YouTube or just wherever you get your podcast, it is big. We definitely appreciate it, and the show continues to grow. Got to give a big shout out to my man Ari, who does a fantastic job behind the scenes, making sure we're looking good on YouTube. So shout out to Ari. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well at your boy Q254. And of course, you got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, as many of you use, at 707-654-4693. We'll close out the show today with those calls and texts. Plenty of feedback from the game on Sunday. The Raiders lose to the Kansas City Chiefs, so we'll hear from you coming up in segment number 3. Coming up in segment number 2, we'll talk about what's next. What do the Raiders do? Where do they go from here, as they're now sitting there at 2-6 overall in the season? And I mentioned it last week. It was evaluation season now, right? It's time to see who you move forward with and who you don't. Well, it's taking it a step further now. So now there could be some moves that are being made, and we'll talk about that in segment number 2. Here in segment number 1, we'll just kind of talk about the game, how it went, where they went wrong for the Silver and Black as they lose 27-20 to the Kansas City Chiefs. Before we get into that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL. It's all one word for $20 off your first purchase. So again, the Raiders lose their fourth in a row, 27-20, in a game that, well, the score was a lot, bigger of a gap at one point. Raiders scored a last-second touchdown late in the game in the fourth quarter, but this is a game that, to me, felt very winnable. A game that Gardner Minshew came out looking really good. Didn't turn the ball over till the second half when he fumbled, but, 24 for 30, 209 yards, a couple touchdowns, no interceptions. So you take that from Gardner Minshew. You think, okay, that gives them an opportunity to win a game, and they just weren't able to get it. Their opening drive, that looked really good. When they went down and scored a touchdown, Jacoby Myers, the return of Jacoby, big ups to him. That was great to see him back, and obviously there were some good things that happened with him. Brock Bowers is fantastic. It's a really good 1-2 punch, but it just seems like what was working early, the Raiders decided to go away from it. And for some reason, that just is what they do. And, of course, there's going to be so much questions about Luke Getsy. Of course, we'll talk about him coming up in segment number 2, but it just seemed like the rhyme and reason for the play calling just did not go very well. So Minshew, again, those for 209 yards, nothing great, but a couple touchdowns, no picks, and he did lose a fumble, though, in the third quarter. That really was a backbreaker. Again, the turnovers is something that the Raiders can't have. Trayvon Merrick had an interception on the game that set the Raiders up in a really good field position. Matter of fact, at the 3-yard line of the Chiefs, and the Raiders got no points, right? We talked about penalties and turnovers. You got to win the turnover battle, and you've got to, cut back the penalties. Penalties, they cut them back, only 5 for 32 yards, not too bad at all. And again, coming up with that interception was great, even though Gardner did lose that one fumble. But, ultimately, the Raiders only had 56 total plays. Something I talk about all the time. They need to get over, 70 plays. They need to get around 70 plays each and every game. They only have 56. So that kind of lets you know they're going to lose the time of possession battle. They just weren't able to string together offense that worked consistently. There was a couple plays, points in the game where I just thought, like, what in the world is going on, right? And one area that really stood out to me was right before halftime. The Raiders got the ball back with about a minute 56 left. I'm not sure if it was a minute 56. It was close to that, right? And right before halftime. And the play calling was so suspect that the Chiefs got the ball back with 58 seconds left and a timeout, and they go down and score. Now, they only scored a field goal, but they scored. Where the Raiders had an opportunity to go down, score, go into the locker room, get the ball out coming out at halftime, they could have double dipped. Instead, it was like boom, boom, boom. Like the Raiders weren't trying to be aggressive and score and hold on to the ball. They were trying not to give the ball back to the Chiefs, right? So it's like it was almost like they weren't playing to win; they were playing not to lose, if that makes sense. And you can't play like that against the Chiefs or anyone else, but especially against the Chiefs, right? I mean, that's a team that can score quick, fast, in a hurry. They get the ball with 58 seconds and a timeout, and they go right down the field and get a field goal. Any points at that point is gravy, and that's what they got. And so the Raiders just can't do that. That's shooting yourself in the foot. The defense did well enough. Like, if you didn't watch the game, you're like, oh, well, they gave up 27 points. Defense didn't do very good. No, defense did good enough to win the game. There's no doubt. The offense did not do their part. They didn't do their share. And that's been the story for a lot of the season. There was a play call. Zamir White, 2nd and 9, goes for an outside zone run, right? And they try to get him to hit the outside, and run this one. And it just didn't make any sense to me. He doesn't do that well, right? So why are you trying to have him do that? The Raiders ended up with a 54-yard field goal on that drive, but that could have been, instead of a field goal drive, that could have been a touchdown drive. But it just seemed like the play calling and the personnel that you used in that play calling didn't make any sense. Again, don't ask Zamir White to do something that he's not very good at. And by the way, he hasn't been good at running the rock at all this season, right? I mean, you want to talk about a big disappointment. Zamir White's been a big disappointment. But when I see Getsy call outside run with Zamir White, I'm thinking, wait, why are you doing that? I look back at Amber Theo-Harris in the press box when that happened. I go, wait. I just kind of shrugged my shoulders, like the MJ shrug. Like, what's going on? And she said, I don't know why you would call that with a guy that doesn't do that very well. So that didn't make any sense. Second half, you want to talk about the ultimate opportunity to win a game, right? The Chiefs punt the ball. The Raiders have a nice return. DJ Turner has a nice return, then gets a 15-yard penalty on top of that. They get the ball at the 29-yard line of Kansas City. The 29-yard line. They go 10 plays and only get 14 yards. Like, I don't even know how that's possible. Like, I watched it. I witnessed it. I was there. But if you just told me, if you walked up to me on the street and said, hey, Q, the Raiders are going to have 10 plays and only going to get 14 yards, I wouldn't even I would say, how is that possible? Well, they did it, and they settled for a field goal. And then, if that wasn't already the backbreaker, then Trayvon Merritt comes up with a nice interception after a tip ball. John Jenkins got his hand on the ball, nice pass rush, and he takes it all the way back to the 3. The 3-yard line of Kansas City, and the Raiders lose yards. They lose yards. Like, I get it. You can't run the ball, so don't try. Don't try to run the ball. They averaged about, less than 2 yards a carry? They had 21 carries for 36 yards. I had to write that down. 21 carries, 36 yards, 1.6 yard a carry. At some point, and I say it on the show, you have to establish a run game. I say it all the time. I do truly believe that they have to establish a run game for this offense to go. But if you're only averaging 1.6 yards a carry, at some point you just got to scrap it. I'm sorry. Like, as much as I want to see them run the ball, you have to just say, this ain't working. So we're just going to pass the ball. Again, Brock Bowers was very active early. Jacoby Myers was very active early. Bowers was 5 for 5 for 58 yards, right? First quarter, he had 3 catches, and he didn't catch the ball again. Didn't have any targets again until late in the fourth quarter. You can't do that when you have a weapon like him. Down by the goal line, when you're first and goal at the 3-yard line, no targets to Brock Bowers. No targets to Jacoby Myers. Like, that can't happen. Jacoby returns, six catches out on 7 targets, 52 yards and a touchdown. Side note, I met Jacoby Myers' dad before the game. Really good dude. So shout out to him. Really good dude. It was great to see Jacoby back. Really good weapon for the Raiders. He's just that good. He's that guy that, as he told Eric Allen, I just get open. Well, how do you get open? I just get open. And he does. He gets open. He makes great plays. Great to see Jacoby back. Unbelievable that he has action early in the first quarter, second quarter, and then you don't see them go to him again for a very long time. None of that makes any sense. So, again, this feels like another game, kind of rinse and repeat, where the Raiders had so many opportunities to make plays, and they didn't do it. They had opportunities to score points, and they couldn't do it. Again, when you get the ball first and goal from the 3, and you come away at no points, like, you shouldn't even come away with the field goal. There should be no question that you're going to score a touchdown there. You should never be in shotgun. First of all, you should never be in shotgun. And if you can't run the ball, then don't. Throw the ball in the end zone. That's okay. That's not a rule that you can't throw the ball in the end zone. Throw it in the end zone. That's how they scored their first touchdown. That's how they scored a later touchdown. DJ Turner got a touchdown catch, right? Throw the ball into the end zone. It's okay. If you can't run, fine. Don't try to, fit a square peg into a round hole. And that's what they were trying to do with the run game. 21 carries for 36 yards. That's embarrassing. That is absolutely embarrassing. So now what do? You're sitting there at 2-6. Raider Nation knows that this season's a wrap. And that's what it is. Like, I know there's a lot of football left. I'm excited about each and every game. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to be at the games. I can't. But I understand what the situation is. I know the assignment. It's 2-6. You're not coming back from that. You're not all of a sudden going on some big, long run. You're just not. That's the reality of it. You have one more game before the bye, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's some big shakeups after the bye. I would not be shocked at all. Oh, by the way, you got to go to Cincinnati, a team that just got waxed by the Eagles. That can't wait for you to get there because they know that team's struggling. We're going to take advantage. But the Raiders lose 27-20 to the Chiefs. Again, a game that the Chiefs did not play great. They weren't, but their playmakers got the ball, and the Raiders playmakers didn't. Bowers had 5 catches. Kelsey had 10. At least, right? At least they found a way to get him the ball. They know he's their guy, so they got him the rock, right? Kareem Hunt got it done on the ground. Xavier Worthy, their rookie, their speedster, got it done. Patrick Mahomes made some big plays. Like, the guys that needed to have their hands on the ball had their hands on the ball. And the guys on defense that needed to make plays, impact plays, so they can win the game, they made impact plays. So the Raiders dropped 27-20, 2-6 overall in the season. What is next? What do they do? Obviously, the offense is broken. The defense is holding on for good life. Holding on for dear life, I should say. We'll talk about what's next. We'll do that coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I did want to tell you about a couple great sponsors here on the Locked On Raiders podcast, including LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn is not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, guess what? You're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional. You find them on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. They're constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process easier and quicker. And we all like that. Right now, what you need to do, post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I also want to tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks, that's the best place to get real money sports action. They have over 10 million members and billions with a B of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less, at least 2 players for a shot to win up 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Right now, they are, as I mentioned, the best place to find and get real money sports action. They also can help you win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You sign up today, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And they offer weekly promotions that could lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each and every Tuesday. That's why it's called Taco Tuesday. Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more values for your lineup. So right now, all you need to do is, go to prizepicks.com. You download the app. You use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. So check this out. Maybe Jamar Chase is in your lineup, right? And, of course, that's something to pay attention to. Next week is the Bengals. For more than 79.5 receiving yards, you can say, yeah, he's going to go over that. Or, no, you know what? Ja'Cory Bennett's going to lock him down. He's not going to go. He's not going to have more than that. He's going to have less than that. Patrick Mahomes just saw what he was going to do, right? 1.5 passing touchdowns. No, he's going to have less than that. Travis Kelce, more than 59 yards. Yep, guess what? He's going to have more than that, more than 10 catches. Whatever the case may be. Again, you just download the app today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. The Raiders lose to the Kansas City Chiefs 27-20. They're 2-6 on the season after 8 weeks. They have another game coming up against the Cincinnati Bengals, and then they hit the bye week. So you wonder, as they're on a 4-game losing streak, I should say. I wish they were on a 4-game winning streak. 4-game losing streak. What's next? What do they do? How do they fix what's ailing them? And again, it's evaluation season. So you have to see that they have some kind of progress. Of course, everyone wants to fire everybody immediately. And you know what? That might end up happening, right? It's easy to look at Luke Getsy. I questioned a lot of the play calling. I thought in the second half of the game, the play calling was really bad. Obviously, down by the goal line, it was terrible. There's a lot to look at Luke Getsy and say, yeah, you are the main problem. But there's a lot more going on. I'll say this. We're waiting to go into the locker room after the game, right? There's a bunch of us standing there, the media guys, we're all waiting to go in. So they tell us to go in, and multiple coaches are coming out. They're getting ready to leave. And, players that didn't play, guys that didn't suit up or whatever like that, maybe they're on the practice squad, they're coming out as well before they let us in. Luke Getsy walks by. A lot of these coaches are in, they're in still Raider gear or they're in, like dark color clothes, whatever the case may be. Man, Luke Getsy comes out in like a blue T-shirt and shorts. I remember telling Ryan Hogue, who former Raider wide receiver, who I did Q's Kickoff, the pregame show, and he's on my radio show on Mondays and Fridays. As a matter of fact, he does a fantastic job. He was drafted in 2003, Mr. Irrelevant. Well, we do a segment on my radio show called Nothing's Irrelevant. He has some really great insight. I told him, I said, man, it looked like Luke Getsy already turned in his Raider gear. Like maybe he's the guy, maybe he's the fall guy. But I said that joking, right? Again, and anyone who's listening to this show knows I'm not a guy that just starts sitting here, you got to fire this guy, fire this guy, fire this guy. But what do you do? What do you do next, right? I've been very supportive of Antonio Pierce. I believe that, he's obviously a first-time head coach. You can't judge what he's going to be in his career through 7 or 8 games. You can't. Right? I mean, this season, I think we're going to learn a lot about AP, especially how do you stop the bleeding? Right? That's one of the questions I'll ask him today. We'll talk to him around 11 o'clock this morning. How do you stop the bleeding? You're on a 4-game losing streak. How do you keep the team together? Right? I asked a couple of players in the locker room like Max Crosby and Adam Butler and Trayvon Merrick, how do you stay together when you're, losing like this? And, especially when a guy like Merrick gets the ball all the way back to the 3-yard line, and they can't punch it in. At what point does the defense start saying, well, what the hell are you guys doing? What are you guys doing on offense? Like, how do you can't have that. You can't have, the defense start pointing the fingers at the offense start pointing the fingers at defense. And I'll say this, to the Raiders' credit and Antonio Pierce's, last year, when the Raiders lost 3-0 to the Vikings, I remember asking all those players in the locker room as well, how do you not point the finger at the offense and say, what are you guys doing? And they all said, you know what, we should have scored. We should have scored ourselves. It's not on the offense. They didn't get it done. That's cool. Not their problem. It's not their fault. Like they didn't just say, well, we did our job and they didn't do theirs. They didn't start playing the blame game, which is pretty impressive because I know if I intercepted the ball and took it back to the 3-yard line and handed it to you on a platter and you don't get any points out of it, I'm on the sideline. What are we doing? What are we doing here? What's going on? So I can understand how the frustrations would kick in or how, they start pointing the fingers, but they didn't seem like that. In the locker room, they didn't seem like that. But at some point, you got to sit down if you're Antonio Pierce with the coach and say, okay, how do we figure this out? How do we fix this? And there's going to come a time, and again, I don't want this to be taken as I'm questioning Antonio Pierce. I'm not. I have to emphasize that because somebody will hit me on Twitter. It's inevitable that, oh, you're questioning the coach. You're trying to fire him. You didn't fire Josh McDaniels. Whatever. I'm not. But I have to emphasize that. But at some point in this game, in professional football, we know what it is. As AP says, not me, but AP says, it's a production-based business. If you don't produce, you won't be in business. So if the Raiders can't figure things out and he can't stop the bleeding and the offense doesn't start performing at a higher level, he's going to have to protect himself. Right? I mentioned Ryan Hogue, and I was talking to him as we were leaving the press box. We were leaving the game on Sunday, walking out to the parking lot. I said, well, what happens next? You're a guy that's in the locker room. What does the coach have to do? If that's the main issue, if you can look at it and say, well, the offense is really struggling. The defense is not perfect, don't get me wrong, but the offense is really struggling. Does AP have to do something just to do something? He said, look, this is the deal. And this is what a former player told me, a guy who was in the locker room. Obviously, he's well more versed than I am. He said, look, AP has to do something. If he doesn't do something, one, obviously the fan base is going to be furious because they're going to think, okay, he doesn't care. But the players in the locker room, even though they're not pointing the finger, even though they're not blaming the other side of the ball, they know that there's a problem. They know that there's a disconnect. And if they see the head coach settling and not being, like fired up and okay, I got to fix this, then they're going to get comfortable. And they can't do that. So he told me straight up, he's got to do something. I don't think that is, okay, we're just going to go fire Luke Getsy and give the play calling to Scott Turner or whatever the case may be. I don't think that's the case. And especially right now, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think if anything like that were to happen, it would be after the bye week, right? Just like I don't think a quarterback change is going to happen until after the bye week. But something has got to happen where this team either gets a new voice, giving the play call. I don't know. Something has got to be done. You're on a 4-game losing streak. Max Crosby always talks in the locker room. He talked very briefly. Like every answer he had for us on Sunday night was very short, very short. I mean, so you could see the frustrations are bubbling up, right? And players like Max, who, like he said, every time he hits the field, he wants to win. He's not taking moral victories. And, I had someone tweet at me and was like, well, they played really hard. That's all you can ask for. And I was like, no, it's not. No, it's not. That's not all you can ask for. Like playing hard, that's a given. It's sports. You're supposed to play hard. I play hard if I go out in the street, right? We can go play football in the street and I'll play hard. Doesn't mean that I'm good or that we're winning, right? I mean, look, if you're the Raiders, every time you hit the field, you're supposed to play to win. You're not, well, just put a good effort out there. No, an effort, that's a given. You're supposed to do that. It's just like me doing a show. Like, I'm going to give you effort every time. I also deserve, or you deserve, for me to give you a good show every time. If I don't, then something's wrong. There's never a time where I'm going to come back and be like, you know what, that show sucked yesterday, but hey, I gave an effort. Right? If that's the case, then that's when I need to retire. That's when I need to hang it up. That's when the microphone, I need to put it away, right? So, I mean, you expect them to play hard every time, but you also expect them to win games, especially games like that against an undefeated Kansas City Chiefs team that was very beatable. That was a very winnable game. There's no doubt that the Raiders could have won that game, and especially when they had all the momentum on their side in the second half with the punt return, get to the 29-yard line. Took 10 plays, Raider Nation, 10 plays to get 14 yards. So obviously the rhyme and reason with the offensive play calling is not there. You get the ball gifted to you at the 3-yard line and you lose yards. You don't gain yards. So something has to happen. There has to be a move. And if for no other reason, AP has to do that to at least even protect himself. Because, again, everyone's being evaluated. I'm not for firing a guy, 7-8 games into his coaching career. I really don't want to fire a guy a year into his coaching career because that just continues to have that turnstile at the head coaching spot. But something has to give. So he has to go out and make some kind of move, maybe multiple moves. It could be taking the play calling from Luke Getsy, similar to what the Jets did with Nathaniel Hackett. They took the play calling away from him, put it on Todd Downing. He can say, you know what, Gardner Minshew did a good job, didn't turn the ball over as far as interceptions, but he fumbled, so let's go to Desmond Ridder. Right? Ridder came in the game, looked like he was going to do a little RPO action, which is cool. He could do that. That's fine. I'm not saying Desmond Ridder is the end-all, be-all, but at some point he's going to be out there. So there's got to be some kind of shakeup. Again, I'll ask these questions today. What kind of shakeup can you make to stop this bleeding? He told us last week the biggest issue that the Raiders were having, penalties and turnovers. Well, they only turned the ball over once, and they only had five penalties. But they still couldn't punch it in multiple times on the plus side of the field. Right? That's a problem. That's the big problem. You have to be able to score touchdowns in this business. I say it all the time. Field goals are nice, but they're not going to win you games. And then obviously when you don't score any points, that's one thing. But I had no problem with them going for it on fourth down. I thought that was non-negotiable. They had to score a touchdown. I honestly thought it was a non-negotiable that they scored a touchdown when they got the ball at the 29-yard line. I was like, you're at the 29-yard line? You're already given 3 points. You have to get in the end zone. And unfortunately for them, they didn't. And then you get the ball right back, and you can't get in the end zone. That's a problem. So AP and his coaches and his staff needs to sit down and say, okay, this is how we fix this. This is how we at least attempt to fix this, move forward. There has to be something that is seen, visibly seen and understood of how the Raiders are going to attempt. I'm not saying it's going to work, but they have to attempt to shake things up. If not, everyone is a dead man walking, as far as I'm concerned, right? Everyone is on the clock if there's not some moves made. And AP has to do that to show, again, the fans, the owners, everyone that matters, but also the players in the locker room. Show that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get this thing turned around. He has to do that for those players. Again, I'll ask the questions this morning. We'll see what happens, but something. There has to be something that has changed. It could be as simple as firing Luke Getsy, right? It could be. If that happens, I honestly don't think it's going to happen until the bye week, but that's just me. So we'll see. And even when he was asked about, the offensive coordinator in the post-game show or post-game press conference, he said it's more execution. So we'll ask him. I'll ask him this as well. Now that you looked at the film, was it execution or was it play calling? Or was it a combination of the two? All questions that I think are very fair. So that's what I got for you. Coming up in segment number 3, what are your thoughts? 707-654-4693. That's coming up in segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about Game Time. What is Game Time? Well, Game Time, one, is fantastic. They can get you tickets to anything. You need tickets to something, Game Time has got you covered. You're trying to go to the World Series, you can go to the World Series by way of Game Time. Game Time has your tickets to sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, theater, movies, whatever. If it has a ticket, Game Time could hook you up with that. It's just that simple. And since the World Series is going on right now, then maybe that's the ticket maybe that's the hot ticket that you're looking for. And what I really love, I talk about it all the time, is the seat view. The panoramic view that you can see from your seats before you buy your tickets. You know exactly what the seats look like. You know exactly what the view is going to be of the field, of the theater, of the comedy show, whatever it is. You know what it's going to be when you're sitting there. They have all-in pricing, so this feature, the total is up front. It lets you know, so there's no surprise fee or anything when you check out. All of a sudden, you think you're paying this much, and all of a sudden it's like a huge price, jump. That ain't going to happen because they got the all-in pricing. They also got the great low price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets. So what do you need to do? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, you need to create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your time to shine. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with YTD. He's calling to talk about the team, the season, and how he feels about everything that he's, seen and gone through the last 8 weeks. Here he is, YTD.
Thank you. Just call me YTD. You probably remember me, a long time listener. I just have to call in because, man, this is just an unmitigated disaster. I have not seen a complete game this season because I just wasn't excited about this team. As a matter of fact, I actually thought that maybe I just wasn't excited about football anymore. But I've been watching a clip of Jaden Daniels throw a Hail Mary to finish the game off this week, and I'm telling you, it is not football that's the problem. This team just is bad, man. Like, AP is not a good coach, dude. He's not. Here's the problem. We've been saying it. The biggest problem for AP was always going to be finding people to coach for him. So when we start blaming people like Getsy, we're like, yeah, because he's the only one that would coach for him. That was always a problem. You can't win if you don't have good coaches because Nobody's going to coach for AP. You can't bring him back next year because who's going to want to coach for him? This is just a bad team. It is not fun to watch at all. But football's still great.
Thanks so much for the call. Appreciate you, brother. And I mean, not sure what or where to point the finger, but my question is it the coaches that AP has? Is it the players not performing? Is it a combination of the two, right? You're right. The team's not fun to watch. It's unfortunate. I can't honestly tell you. This is one of the questions I had in the pregame show. I don't know how good this team is or bad this team is. I really don't. And obviously bad teams make, bad plays and aren't able to capitalize when they have the ball at the 3-yard line. So that's obviously bad. Having a lot of penalties is bad. Turning the ball over is bad. But it feels like the team has a lot of talent. It feels like they could play with anybody, as you saw it on Sunday against the Chiefs. But then something always happens, right? So again, it's like a fine line. I don't know how good the coaching staff is, because obviously AP has them playing hard. Again, going back to the point of, well, hey, the guys played really hard. That's all you could ask for. They played really hard. They were in position. They just can't, as Trayvon Merrick told us in the locker room, just can't finish. And it's just, I don't know. It's hard to really point the finger and just, point out one area of concern. But at the end of the day, the one thing I do know, and Antonio Pierce has said this many times, I reference it on the show all the time, you're judged off your wins and losses. It's a production-based business. If you don't produce, you're not in business. Again, his words, not mine. Thanks for the call. Appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Boogie. Boogie Oogie in the IE says, Q, it's Boogie from the IE, first time texting in, so I hope you get this. I love that AP has them competing, but it's time he gives the play calling duties to someone else. Getsy is not the answer. When do we get a quarterback? And when we do get a quarterback, he's not a guy you should want to develop your young quarterback. The zone running scheme has to be thrown away. As a coach myself, you have to know when something isn't working and trash it. Nothing is wrong with that. It's going to be a long season, but I'm going to be watching every week. Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders is in silver and black next season. Raider Nation, I know it's tough. I know you're tired of being patient, but we're almost there. Q, love the show. Listen every day. Keep doing what you're doing. Boogie Oogie out. Raiders. That's Boogie in the IE. And, of course, I added the Oogie because why not? Let's have a little bit of fun. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. Like, it feels like Luke Getsy is probably going to be the immediate scapegoat, right? And for good reason. I'm not saying that he's been good, because he hasn't. He's been very questionable, which is something we questioned back in the offseason when he got hired, right? We knew how bad it was in Chicago, and the Raiders still hired him. So a lot of that's on AP too, because he hired him. And his reasoning for hiring him is like, well, he beat us when he was a Chicago coordinator with a D3 quarterback, backup running back. He beat us bad. Well, that just means that the Raiders weren't very good. Yeah, I never thought that Luke Getsy was a great offensive coordinator, only based off that. I didn't know anything else about him. Devontae Adams liked him. So, he was excited about that. So I feel like he probably had a little bit of say. And, well, now Devontae's not even with the Raiders. So that doesn't matter. It's really tough to see how it all plays out. I'm with you, Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. And I'll tell you right now, I know that I've been very on the fence with who I think is the best guy. I honestly think Shedeur is the best guy. I do. I like Cam a lot. I like Cam Ward a lot. But I think Shedeur Sanders is the guy. I think I'm finally convinced myself that that's the dude. There's like a handful of guys that I've been looking at. I think Shedeur is probably the way to go. He's a really good quarterback that wants to be quarterback in the pocket first, but has the athleticism to do stuff outside of the pocket too, right? And I think that that's the ideal world that you want to live in. It's kind of what Patrick Mahomes does. He doesn't want to run. He doesn't need to run, but he will when he has to, right? When the pressure's there, and he'll pick up, big first downs. I think Shedeur has those same qualities. He wants to sit in the pocket and beat you that way. He can do that. CJ Stroud's the same way. He's athletic enough to get something done. That's all you need. You just need to have the willingness to do it. But sitting in the pocket is a good thing. I mean, again, it's October, October 28th. It's almost November 1st. We shouldn't be talking about the draft already and what the Raiders are going to do. But at the same time, I watch college football every single Saturday. I'm like, yep, I think that's it. And honestly, I watch college football to scout for the NFL. Like that's why I love college football as much as I do. And it's not just quarterbacks that I'm looking at. I'm looking at wide receivers. I'm looking at running backs. I mean, look, I'll tell you right now, if the Raiders could somehow find Shedeur Sanders, Ricky White III from UNLV, and Ashton Genty from Boise State, if they can get all three of those on the team, they'd be in a really good position, right? But we all know what it is, right? That would be very difficult. Genty is going to be a first-round running back. He's going to be picked in the first round, no doubt about it. Ricky White, I think he's probably going to be a second or third-round pick, but he's a really good wide receiver as well. So anyway, we'll get into draft talk later, but I'm with you. I understand what you're talking about. Let's get another quick call in. This one's from Jacob from Wilmington, North Carolina. He's calling to talk about the game, the loss. Also talks about the positivity that he saw in the game. Here he is, Jacob from Wilmington, North Carolina.
Hey, Q. Hey, Ari. This is Jacob Mazza from Wilmington, North Carolina. The skateboard guy, TerraDeps.com. Hey, to the Raiders. To the team. I respect the way that you played. I respect that. I know we lost. Way to show up. Alright, guys? You got the nation behind you, always. Win or lose. But like the way you showed up. Fellas, let me tell you, it was nice. I liked it. I know we lost. But keep playing like that. I want to see more of that. Okay? I don't want to see stupid things. I want to see good ball. I want to see us coming together as a team. Team, not me. Yeah, there's a me in team. The joke's corny. But I saw you today as a team. Play like that from now on. Please, please, please. Pretty please with the cherry on top. Just win, baby.
Thank you for the call. I appreciate you. And yeah, I mean, the effort, again, as I mentioned earlier in the show, was great, right? The energy, the beginning of the game, the scripted plays were really good. Like, Getsy's money on the scripted plays looks good. The drives go really well. They get creative, right? They do some end arounds. They let DJ Turner run the rock. They let Jacoby Myers run. I mean, they do some creative things on the scripted plays. It's when they get off script is when things start to break down. So there's no moral victories. Max Crosby told us that in the locker room. He's not one for moral victories. He's trying to get dubs. But at the end of the day, the Raiders are a 2-win team. They're 2-6. You are what your record says you are. You're not very good. It's just that, and AP said it last week. Right now, we're not a very good football team. We're not playing very good football. And when you lose another game, a game that you should have won, and even, it doesn't matter if it's the Chiefs or anyone else. In a game where you're right there, you have every opportunity, and again, gifted multiple opportunities, and you can't get it done, that's a you thing. That's a you thing. You've got to find a way to clean that up. So thanks so much for that call. Do appreciate you. Keeping it in North Carolina, we got a text from Matthew from Dobson, North Carolina. It says, Q, it's Matthew Stanley from Dobson, North Carolina here, and the headline for this game should be squandered opportunities. 2 questions. At this point, what is the justification for keeping Luke Getsy as our offensive coordinator? Being on the Kansas City 5-yard line twice to come away with 3 points was the difference in the game. Well, that and Gardner's 11th turnover of the year. This leads to my second question. Do you think Desmond Ridder starts next week at Cincy? Thanks, man. Love the show. Much love to our ailing Raider Nation. That's Matthew from Dobson, North Carolina. And thanks for the text. I appreciate you. I think that if Ridder starts, it'll probably be after the bye week, giving him enough time to really get up to speed on what he's going to do. But that'll be a question that we ask, to tomorrow. I'll ask that on, to Antonio Pierce. Hey, is there any chance that, you make a quarterback move? I think that he'll probably say, well, Gardner didn't play that bad. And he didn't. He actually played pretty well except for that fumble. That fumble was not the business. That obviously led to more points, and you just can't do that. But, the bigger issue wasn't Gardner Minshew on Sunday. The bigger issue was just, the overall play calling. Like you said, get down inside the red zone, 1st and goal, whatever the case may be, multiple times, and you can't get in the end zone. You come away with 3 points and then no points. Like that just can't happen. So, I think that if there's any changes, shakeups, even with Getsy as the offensive play caller, I think that's all going to happen after the bye. The good thing, I guess, if you're looking for the silver lining, there's only one more game and then the bye. So that's honestly when I think you're going to see a lot of moves. You might even see, as Adam Schefter reported on Sunday, there's a couple Raiders that other teams are looking at, to potentially trade for. And I'm hoping guys like, Jacoby Myers, who's a very good wide receiver, I'm hoping that teams aren't trying to go get him. I would hate to see the Raiders lose him. He's a hell of a wide receiver. Really good player. They need him. They need him and Brock Bowers. But I can see potentially that week, which is the trade deadline. November 5th is the trade deadline. That's the Raiders bye week. I can see a handful of moves being made that week, from the offensive coordinator to the quarterback to potentially a player or two traded, as the Raiders try to prepare and build up as much draft capital as they can, right? So they can do what they need to do to get who they need to get to be a team moving forward. So the next couple of weeks are going to be very interesting for the Silver and Black. But thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Got a call from Army Raider, a text from Jay Raider in the 954. Mr. Pigface hit us with a call, and Mason hit us with a text. We'll get all that coming up tomorrow. We'll get more news and notes, of course. We'll hear from Antonio Pierce a little bit later on this morning around 11 o'clock. And he'll obviously, talk about this game, and we'll have plenty of questions for him to see what he's got to say about this team moving forward, and if there's any moves or shakes that they can do in the meantime, in between time. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.